Good afternoon, beautiful people.
Everybody.
Had to check the time.
What time is it? What time is it? Well, at least here it is. Yeah, it's afternoon. All right, okay.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Two Japs, many cultures who don't know what time zone they're in, or barely know what time zone they're in, let alone know what time of day it is. This is what Corona does to us. We forget where we are on the time scale. But this is not an episode about time. This is about language. How about how we say things?
Yes.
You saw it in that image. So is it? How do you call that bird that can't fly?
Emu. So the current storm is raging in reaction to how a particular NPR host here in the US pronounced the wonderful ratite bird known as the humble emu in Australia, but he pronounced it as emu, taking the more phonetical sound of that, because it is spelled E-M-U, right? And one might say, from an Australian point of view, if you say you, you say you in the alphabet, wouldn't it be you in a word, emu? But no, in this particular case, the gentleman was brought to pronouncing it as emu, and it was picked up by many news outlets in Australia.
Well, and I would understand how people in Australia would feel compelled to comment on this, being that the bird is native to Australia.
Yeah.
So it would probably behoove the world to call the animal by the name that the human companions of the animal would call it, right? So I would get that. On the other hand, then there is this thing with the English language that it has taken on so many shades across the world where it is spoken natively, that because I asked my daughter about this like 5 minutes before we went on, and I said, what do you call this bird? And she was like, didn't even think about it. She said, emu. Okay, that's what I would call it too. Then I said, do you call it you? How do you call the Google video service that we're live streaming from? And she said, well, YouTube. And I said, not YouTube? She said, no, it's a tube. It's you. So the English language has some variance in those parts of the world where it's spoken natively. So I think accounting for those variances is one of the strengths of the English language. Now, when it comes to naming names properly, I think the place of origin should matter, shouldn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I think it does. But having the perspective from a Polish, the Polish perspective, and the other more important side of my family, I would say that a word like this, and this was actually brought up in the book called Poland by James Michener, where he actually did tell a short story about how a queen who had been brought to Poland was presented with this place, and her pronunciation was, of course. Now, how would you pronounce this?
Well, I don't speak Polish, so my first initial way to pronounce it would be going by the phonetics that I associate with these letters, even though they have some parts that I'm unfamiliar with. So the first way would be in German, I would probably say Landshut or Landkut, and in English, probably Lankut. Now I know, though, that the Polish L with that slash to it is more like a w sound, right? So it would probably be something like Wanchut or something like this.
Very close, yeah, Wanchut, right? So, so it's important if you came to a crossing and somebody asked you directions, and you were asking directions to something you had read, and you went, where is Lankut? They wouldn't have a clue where to send you, right? So that's important, of course, directions. So in terms of the actual pronunciation of a name, I mean, the name of a place would be pretty much, nobody's upset about that. Yeah.
So this was the name of the place. Wanchut is a
yes.
Okay. So there's a place in Poland that also begins with that L letter, but with a pronunciation Lodsz, I believe. Rouge, right?
Yeah.
And there's a popular kind of cheesy song in the 1970s and 80s in Germany. It was very popular. It was something like, "Darling, let's go to Wuj." But Germans, as they sang the song, it was "Wir fahren nach Lodz." So they would pronounce it in the German way. And if you sang that to a Polish person, they're like, "What are you singing about? What is it?" So it is a little bit off-putting to those who live in that place, or who hear their own names mispronounced, or the names of animals that live just outside their home being mispronounced as emu. Henceforth, I will make the point to call it emu. All right?
No problem. As I would probably make the point if I was going to be, if I didn't know Christian, right? If I didn't know Christian, but I saw his name and I saw his last name, and Christian is pretty open about this. He says, it doesn't matter how you pronounce my name. I understand you pronounce it differently, but of course he does culture. Now, if we were presented with somebody who came from a different culture and we saw your name, Christian, spelt the way I think I can do it pretty well by now, but I'm not going to try it. But it is most people would say, oh, Christian, even the word Christian, right? Would you not pronounce it Christian? More like in German, yeah?
In German, we would pronounce it Christian, yeah, like it was, yeah. And thank you for recognizing that. However, I've come to accept Christian as the default pronunciation, because this is a name that exists outside the German language, and it is in fact not a German name. So Christian or Christian goes back to its Greek origins of Christos, which is the name they gave the Christ, right? So it has some biblical connection. So Christios or Christianos is, and I'm probably mispronouncing it in Greek because I don't speak Greek. Okay. So Vali Murphy, if you're watching, you might set us straight. So it's not a German name. It's a name that has been adopted in many languages. So I cannot claim it to there is a proper pronunciation for it. So if the English say Christian, then that's what it is, and I have no issue with that. However, my last name is very much German, so there is no debate about that.
Yes. So I will say it, Höferle. Yes.
And I will accept that.
You'll accept it. And so that response, right? That is a kind response from somebody who goes, but probably in the back of mind goes, bloody Australian.
No, I wouldn't make your nationality responsible for it. However, it's like, okay, yeah, you don't speak German. That's why you can't pronounce that letter, and that's all right. Very few languages make that sound.
So how do you say it?
Well, first of all, I think there's 3 languages that have this letter, the second letter in my last name. In German, it's called an umlaut because it has 2 dots over the vowel of O, so it changes the sound of that vowel to a different sound. I think Swedish has it, and Turkish has these letters. Maybe there's another language out there that I'm not familiar with. Please educate me. I'd love to learn, but I think those are the 3 languages in which that letter is part of the name, or part of the alphabet. So the O without the 2 dots in German is pronounced like a O, like you make a circular motion with your mouth, O. And if there's 2 dots on it, it changes from O to Ö. I'm still making the same lip movement, but O, Ö. You might hear a difference. Now, to make matters worse, then there's the U letter that comes with or without the 2 dots. So the U letter in German would be pronounced like a U, like a U, U, U. And with 2 dots on it, it changes from U to Ü. And the difference between Ü and Ö is very hard to hear for non-Germans. So they mispronounce my last name as Höferle or Höferle or all sorts of things. So the proper pronunciation would be Höferle. And depending on where in Germany you are, you might roll the R a bit more or less. So I'm from the south, so we roll our R's at the front of our mouth. So I would call it Höferle. So the R is actually audible. But up north, they would probably call it Höferle. You wouldn't hear the R.
So I guess the importance here is and again, I guess if you're from a culture and you've had exposure to other cultures and you're used to other people kind of saying your name in different ways, it can become a conversation starter. It can become something that says it opens up a conversation.
Right.
You and I do trainings, and we do trainings with people from all around the world. We can often be aware or prepare ourselves quite well for the way the person's name is pronounced, or we may not. We may not have that insight. So it might be just a great icebreaker to bring that out. And you know, being self-deprecating, that's that comes with the territory. Saying, you know what, my mouth is not built for this. You know, for my wife Marta, the actual sound of th doesn't exist in the language. So everything becomes t, dare. That kind of thing. So it's
in my language it doesn't exist either. But most Germans make the th sound. They make it into an s sound often. So the weather is very nice today. So let's go outside and enjoy the sun. So also the different z sound in the English language don't exist the same way in German language, which sometimes makes it a little confusing to listen to the not well prepared German speaking English. So languages are a tough thing, but the name, I mean, I respect that people struggle with a foreign language, as do I. Mark, I'm going to mispronounce your name deliberately. Mark Popson says it's tomato, for heaven's sake. Tomato. Is it tomato or is it tomato? Oh, either way, Mark, thank you. Tomato. I call it tomato, by the way. So, the tomato is native to North America. Maybe the Americans get to call it that way. Just saying. So if you want your emu, you got to accept the tomato. What I would like to say though is that last names or first names in general are part of people's identity. What is he saying? Because I have to
put it in context that Mark is from Yorkshire in the UK, right? So
Yorkshire,
and so he would say off to pub, you know, off pub. So they'll drop the not off to the pub. They'll drop it. You know, so it becomes a matter of language. So
he doesn't have time for all the words. Okay,
no. We've got to get to the pub. Why would you want to use? You don't want to take the time.
So you would say off to the office, however, off to pub, because pub is more important than office, I guess. All right, got it. All right. So now pronouncing names, I think that's where it gets tricky, because yes, I don't mind people butchering my name, especially since I'm the son of a butcher, so I've learned to handle that. But it's part of people's identity, right? We may take it in stride abroad because we recognize it's hard for some people to say our name, and yet every time people mispronounce it, it's a little ding. Not that I don't make it mean a whole lot anymore. In the beginning, I was like, come on, isn't that hard? Is it really that hard for you? Could you at least try? And if people try, if they do their best to say it the way I would like them to say it, I give them credit for trying, even if they don't make it. Even if they miss the mark, at least they're trying. But what ticks me off is if people don't even pretend to try. That is, to me, that's a sign of indifference, and indifference is not an endearing trait, at least not in my book. So I will be having a cultural training tomorrow. It'll begin tomorrow with a young couple from Houston, Texas, who are both of Vietnamese origin, and I will most likely struggle very much with their names. So I will practice. The first 10 minutes of our training will be trying to get the pronunciation of the names right, because I'll be spending a total of 7 to 8 hours with them virtually, and I want to make sure that I don't mispronounce their names, because every time they hear me say it the wrong way will hurt my credibility with them, because I'm the one who's going to be their cultural trainer for their foreign assignment, right? So even if even I can get right, how can they expect others to get right? So if I want to set a great example and help them guide their transition abroad, then I think I would do them a disservice. I would also violate my own expectations of my professionalism if I didn't try to pronounce the name properly, as hard as it may be.
And we have a very good friend who does our work, and her name is Mai Nguyen, which I just tripped over it again, and she's Vietnamese origin as well. And so that sound, when we're presented with, just like it is in Polish, many consonants in a row that don't normally go together in an English context, N and G. I mean, N and G is actually a name in these cultures.
Yeah.
So it's a
energy.
so it's, yeah, and Nguyen, and Mai's name is Nguyen. I love language, so especially doing Polish. I mean, it's such a challenging language. When I really started to learn the language, it was I had the advantage of doing a little bit of singing training, and in that you were always taught to pronounce especially the consonants and as the way they are in the native language, if it's Italian, German, or whatever it is. So that was always part of the learning. So I realized that with the Polish language, there are many letters that were pronounced in different ways. And once I learned that, I could probably I could screw up the grammar. That's fine. But the pronunciation, especially from a name perspective, especially recognizing that somebody's name is pronounced a certain way, it actually gets you comments. It's like the first impression you get of people visually. The sound that you project to somebody when you say their name in the right way, I think can set up a very positive intent. So yeah,
and I've noticed this with myself. So every time somebody gets my last name right or close to right the first time, and I know that German is not their first language, that really gets my attention. It's not that I would immediately like that person automatically, but it gets my attention. Like, oh wow, somebody either did their research, or they get it intuitively right, or they studied it, or whatever the reason is, or they maybe they listened to somebody else say it and they were good at repeating that. It lowers the barrier of entry immediately, and it's a rapport building tool, because you recognize my level of communication. You see me at my name level, and you get that right. So I think pronunciation does matter quite a bit in given the right context. So again, the tomato, the emu may not be as much of a big deal. However, for some people it is. So I'm saying it may not be a big deal because it's not to me, but to some people it might be, right? So, and getting it deliberately wrong or mispronouncing names for publicity gain. We've seen it a little bit here in the United States, where public figures are sometimes deliberately mispronouncing their opponents' names. That's when it gets really hurtful and intentional. So there's a difference between ignorance and malintent, right? So we've seen it here, especially in the United States, quite a bit, where one political figure is on purpose mispronouncing their opponent's name in the way that it's not pronounced, and thereby irking the support of the opponent or the opponent themselves, and therefore further dividing the public discourse, so to say, which it's all in the name, right?
Exactly, yeah. And in your particular case, I think I know what you're referring to. We're not here about talking about political, but that is using the possible and deliberately using another, I guess, interpretation of a pronunciation to make it sound like something that associates it with another negative stereotype, and that's just intentional ignorance, and that really should be called out at all times. But I think in that case, the emu and emu pronunciation wouldn't have been so bad at the start, but it was when kind of laughingly brought up, as most Australians would do, laughingly bring it up, the person who said it stood on their principles somehow and said, no, I'm an American, this is my right to say it however I want.
Since you're American, you always have your own right to do whatever you want. I'm only joking. Now, I think the divide or the distinction here that I see is place of origin. If the name came from a certain part of the world. And I would suspect that the name emu is not an English name. I think that is a name that the indigenous population gave the animal, didn't they?
Well, and that is actually how we would kind of bring this full circle, because many animals are named after the indigenous reference to it. But in this particular case, emu is actually a derivative of the Portuguese word for cassowary or ray, which is ema. So the original description of that bird in Australia was then adopted by the European colonists. To say emu, they just they turned it into emu. So it had nothing to do with the indigenous population. And so, right back to the origin of the word, it comes from a different language. Completely, we might not associate it with Australia at all. So it's an interesting, the origin. How far do we take back that origin, right? And then say, okay, are we even pronouncing it right in calling it emu? Because actually, originally it was named by the Portuguese explorers.
Fair point.
As ema, right? So, so again, a little bit of research can say, okay, well, am I questioning, are my assumptions always the correct ones? So just kind of really doing that, just in all things we talk about culture, a little bit of research, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of preparation goes a long way.
And you brought up place names in the beginning. So there are place names that change the name in a different language, right? So the German city of Köln upon the River Rhine in English is called Cologne, which is going back to the name of the place as it was founded by the Romans. It was called a colonia by the Romans. It's therefore Cologne in English would make sense. But then there is like Polish place names. So we call, or Russian or Slavic place names, we call, what's the capital of Poland in English? It's Warsaw, right?
In English, Warsaw. In Polish, Warszawa.
Warszawa, right? In German, it's Warschau. Also not quite accurate. Let's look at former colonial places. Ooh, Woolloomooloo. Am I saying that right? What is this? What was that?
That's a place in Australia.
And how do you say it?
Woolloomooloo.
Woolloomooloo, obviously. All right, good. No, that wasn't even.
But now, it's strange how that visual comes up, and for a lot of non-Australian speakers, they go Wooloom, and like and sometimes we can overthink it, right? But to me, it's just Woolloomooloo. It's a quick.
You should bring up Welsh place names. They are this long and built around consonants. Now, what I found out in recent years is dealing with people from India a lot is that people in India abandoned the colonial names of their places. So, well, now it escapes me, right? Mumbai used to be called, what was the pre-colonial, the colonial name of Mumbai was called Bombay, right? So while the gin is still called Bombay Sapphire, the people in India call that city not Bombay anymore, they call it Mumbai, and now it's not Kolkata, it's Kolkata, and it is Bangalore instead of I don't even remember what it used to be. So place names carry meaning beyond the simple description, right? And I think it's important to familiarize yourself with what do you call things, because the names we give things or animals or plants or places or people, the names carry a meaning, and the meaning is often related to the linguistic and cultural origin, and it's connected to identity, especially for us humans. The way we say things matters to our identity, right?
Absolutely. And I put this up because my wonderful learned friend here to pronounce, because I got this and I thought, wow, that.
Where did you find that? In which context did you come across this word?
I just looked up difficult German language, and I thought, and this is, I mean, the definition, and maybe what I, of course, not all research is right. Competitive.
Yes. How would you pronounce it?
Wettbewerbsfähig.
Oh, interesting. Okay, good. No, close.
Wettbewerbsjag.
Oh, okay. Now it's so Wettbewerb. The first part until the B, Wettbewerb, is competition, and fähig, F-A, that's another umlaut. It changes the A sound to an A sound. Fähig is able or competent. So we're able to compete. So the ability to have a competition, competitive, wettbewerbsfähig.
Wettbewerb.
It's an S, not a sh. It's a sound.
Wettbewerbsfähig. Okay. All right.
Wettbewerbsfähig. Yeah, we'll practice. And now all of you, how do you say my last name? Because that's what we're going to do a mic drop on. My name is. Hi, my name is. Not Slim Shady. No, my name is Höferle.
And yes, thank you. We will mic drop on that, and thank you. So add your comment. This could be a very rich conversation, no matter where you are from the world. We would love if you've got a word that you know is difficult for others to pronounce outside of your culture. We'd love to hear it, and we'd love to hear how you do it. And we love to hear from everybody. So, yeah.
When people mispronounce your name, let us know which mispronunciation of your name bothers you the most. So I would like to hear that. And we'll help you set the record straight. How's that?
Absolutely. We are here to serve. See you, mate.
That's it. Two chaps, many cultures, and some languages. See you tomorrow.
See you. Bye.